Yes, people. Recently, I put out on my social media that I was going to talk on a number of topics that are important to me, and that I feel like I have some kind of insight or understanding on that I can share. Today, in light of recent events, I'm going to talk about one of the subjects that I did say I would talk on, and it's related to knife crime. Now, before I get into this, I have to say that to me this should be obvious, but I don't want to leave open to any nonsense interpretations. Nothing that I'm saying implies that people carrying knives is correct, that people carrying knives is acceptable, because it's definitely not correct and it's definitely not acceptable, and we're losing people on our streets on a ridiculously regular basis to knife crime. Having said that, what I will try to do is unpick the thought process in the minds of individuals that is leading to some of the issues that we're seeing, and I will try and unpick the way that that mindset has set about a set of structures, created a set of structures in certain pockets of our society, which is now spreading into wider society. So the specific thing that I want to talk about, and I do want to be specific because I'm not trying to get drawn into discussions about things that I'm not discussing. The specific thing that I want to talk about is the issue that I have with people always suggesting that the solution to knife crime is the fair fight. Why didn't you just have a fair fight? Why couldn't you just have the swingers? Why couldn't you just have the one-on-one and then done? That is a common thing that comes up, and I want to unpick why I think that is a fallacy and it's not useful in the discourse around knife crime. The reason I'm doing this is because often when we talk about knife crime, we have our disgust and our rage and our anger, and we have a load of solutions. We need to do this, we need to do that, this is what needs to be done. So we have, this is what happened, and we have, this is what needs to be done. And we very rarely have a good discussion around why has this happened. And if we can't unpick why it happens, all of this stuff that we're saying needs to be done is based on no foundations. You cannot possibly start to plan solutions before you diagnose a problem. That's like me going to the doctors and I've got a cough and he says, let's give you chemotherapy for lung cancer. But the cough might not be lung cancer. If you do not diagnose the issue, how are you planning for your solutions? Anyway, that's the reason why I think the discussion is important. Okay, so with that in mind, I want to look at this idea of the fair fight. I want to be clear, this is not me attacking anybody who says, oh, why don't they just have the fair fight? I understand the natural draw to saying, this person wouldn't be dead, or would be a lot less likely to be dead if two people had just took up their hands and had a fight, rather than somebody stab someone. So I get that on a instinctive level, but I want to unpick it, and I want to try and show how we've ended up in this situation where that doesn't happen in many situations like it would have previously. This idea of the fair fight goes like this. Me and you have an issue. I'm unhappy about the situation. You're unhappy about the situation. The way that we're going to solve that situation, solve is definitely the wrong word there. The way that we're going to address that situation is through violence. So let's have a fight. We have a scrap, you beat me up. Often people say, you shake hands, you say, yeah, do you know what, fair one, and you move on. Maybe you don't shake hands, but everybody goes home. You've had your fight, everybody goes home. Even if you get battered, you go home, he goes home or she goes home. Everyone makes it home safe. That makes sense as a concept. I understand why that is more desirable than somebody stabbing somebody. It's not desirable. I understand why it's more desirable. But let me unpick the issue with it. Where our huge problems around knife crime have spilled out from, the regions where they started, where they really became prevalent before it became before it leaked into areas on the periphery, is often inner city areas with high deprivation, areas with poor kind of funding, with poor education systems often, with issues within the society like drugs, like gangs. And the issue is in these areas, and the reason why this concept of a fair fight never applied in these areas is that people are violating each other on a regular basis. Sometimes they're violating each other because of their own unhappiness, discomfort, rage about their situation. And sometimes it's around money, it's around taking advantage of other people to try and make your situation in any way better. Now, this is where the idea of the fair fight doesn't work, because these situations occur differently to the way that people often seem to think issues occur. What normally happens is somebody is violating somebody else in one way or another, and that is leading to an altercation. Now, where I grew up, and in a lot of these types of areas, some people violate people all the time, over and over again, and they do it because they can. They do it because if you fight them, they will beat you up every single time. Now I have to ask myself, what is fair about that fair fight? So what we have in the I'm going to say in the ghetto, but it's not, you might not view these places as a ghetto or whatever, but where I'm coming from, that's how I'm referring to it. What you have is a situation where people will violate you and violate you and violate you unless you put yourself in a position where you can't be violated. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Now, we go back to my original example of the fair fight. I have an issue with you, you have an issue with me. We decide we're going to address that through violence. That's the archetypal fair fight. That's still not necessarily fair, but everybody comes into the situation understanding what the part that they play. Now, what you have in the ghetto is a different situation. You have, let me buy you PlayStation off you. Alright, cool. I'll take it with me now, I'll give you the money tomorrow. Cool. Tomorrow comes. Have you got my money? Nah. But you owe me £150 for the PlayStation. I'm not giving it to you. But I want my PlayStation back then. Well, if you're bad, come to my house and take your PlayStation back. Problem. The problem is maybe the person who sold the PlayStation is not bad. Maybe they've got no intention or ability to fight whatsoever. And the person who's got the PlayStation absolutely loves it. All they want to do is fight. Now let's say I'm the person who has sold my PlayStation and not got my money. So I decide, I'm going to fight you about this. So I swing at you. You got Mayweather reflexes, you got Deontay Wilder punch power, you knock me out. I still haven't got my money back. So do I come back tomorrow for the fair fight again? And the next day? And get beat up every day and still don't get my money back? It doesn't make sense. And what happens is people who can fight, people who are tough, take advantage of that very regularly. And people who can't, or people who can't as well, try to find a way to give themselves the advantage. And so you find people arming themselves because they know they cannot handle the fight, and they don't want to fight necessarily, but they also don't want to get taken for an idiot. They also don't want to get abused, essentially, on a regular basis. So they arm themselves. And this is where we have the situation. You telling that person that they should just have the fair fight is basically you saying to that person, you should just get punched up. Who would accept that? Now, obviously, the real solution to this is stay away from these areas, okay? Which is doable, but if you've been in that environment, you'll understand it's a lot easier for some than it is for others. So, this becomes the issue. The issue for the individual, whether consciously or subconsciously, is I'm arming myself because if I don't, I'm vulnerable. And people can, and in these environments will, take advantage of me. That's the individual issue. Now here's how it becomes a structural issue. Here's how it creates a environment that is as dangerous as the one that we see today. If I was the person who could fight in that original scenario, I'm not safe anymore. Me being able to fight is not enough anymore. So now I want to take my advantage back. And the way that I do that is I go and get myself a knife. Because even if you can fight, you could be vulnerable. And so this cycle just spreads out. You hear that someone got stabbed. Your friend gets killed. The person who you get on the bus with every day starts showing people his knife. People start to ask themselves, do I need to have a knife? Now the answer should always be no. In fact, the answer is always no. But I can understand a mindset where people make the wrong decision. If we can't unpick that honestly and get away from the throwaway, oh, well, they should have just had a scrap, we'll never solve the problem. We'll never solve the problem telling somebody who can't fight that they should have just had a fight with somebody who could fight, even though they didn't want to fight in the first place. And we'll never solve the problem by telling somebody who doesn't want to carry a knife, who doesn't want to stab someone, that they should just have a fair fight with someone who's attacking them with a knife. So now we need to understand that the fair fight is not the solution to this issue. Furthermore, in a lot of ways, it's part of the problem, because it accepts that the violence is okay and the violence is normal. And as soon as we accept that the violence is okay and the violence is normal, we go straight back into the escalation. What we need to do is address how are we ending up in these situations where this violence occurs? How can we remove the violence? Because at first we normalize the violence. Now we're in a position where the carrying of weapons is normalized. The de-escalation is not through the violence, it's away from the violence. I've said, and I'll say again, this is not me saying that anybody should carry a knife. This is me saying that if we are going to address the fact that people do carry knives, we have to try to understand why. And one aspect of that is, or one aspect of that originates from, there's no such thing as a fair fight, or there's rarely a fair fight. If you pick two of your friends right now and I said they were going to fight, you could probably tell me who you thought was going to win. That's not a fair fight. Yeah, Arsenal Football Club versus a team down the road is not a fair football match. It shouldn't be the way that anything important is solved. So, I have to say again, rest in peace to the young man who lost his life in Birmingham. I have to say rest in peace to everyone who has lost their life to knife crime. And I sincerely hope that the decision makers, the change makers, the people involved in this discussion really start looking at what are the problems that we have in our society before just throwing platitudes and tick box actions at the problem to say that they did something. I did something. Somebody sat in their car and filmed a boy getting stabbed. They did something. Did it help? We need to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, before we start thinking about how we're going to do it. Thank you for listening, guys. Respect.